Hello, this is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is December 9th, 2024. Welcome to the podcast. Before I begin, I'd like to solicit your help to get more people to subscribe to my channel. If you like my channel, subscribe please, and then pass it on to someone else if they have an interest. Okay, so let's get into this. What I want to talk about today is U.S. federal government policy on the government civilian workforce and contractors. Now, this is very important, as are all of my podcasts, right? Okay, so I want to talk about a statement that was made from the DOGE plan to reform the government, and DOGE is Department of Government Efficiency, right? And again, just so everybody knows, the team that is doing this, Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, are doing it without a salary, and probably their staff. They'll probably use the Inspector General's office to generate any reports and stuff. That would be my guess. Haven't read it. Okay, so what they said was, and I'm extracting part of this. They say that there are millions of unelected, unappointed civil servants within government agencies who view themselves as immune from firing thanks to civil service protections. Now, I'm pulling that because so far, everything that has been said by the incoming administration, even from the campaign when Donald Trump won the election, they're going to try and do. And people are fooling themselves that are currently part of the civil service workforce that there aren't changes coming. There are, because I've read things from agencies and people thinking that they're not going to see any changes. I'm here to tell you that they are going to see some changes. So I want to talk about who I think the unappointed civil servants are that they are talking about. Because within the context of what they said, they're talking about people that are government civilians that are making policy, and specifically policy that the executive, meaning the president, might not have wanted them to do. So these people are senior leaders in the government civilian world, people that are in policy billets or positions are GS-15s and the senior executive service people. So those are chiefs of offices and directors of branches, like a whole division, to kind of give you a visualization of that. Now, the two that I want to talk about are the Pentagon and the State Department. Currently, government civilians and military in the Pentagon are 24,000 people. So you would think that half of those are the government civilians. Now, I don't think that they're going to touch the military arm of the Pentagon. Don't think that they're going to do that. State Department has 11,000 government civilians who are senior executive service officers and GS-15s. That lays the structure of the senior leadership, in my view, that would make decisions or not act on decisions coming from the president that this article is talking about. And let me say something else about that too. There's not millions of unappointed civil service people in the government. And what I really mean by that, if they're looking at the policymakers, that would only be a couple of thousand people. It wouldn't be millions. The total workforce of the government workers, contractors, and civil servants would be over $1 million, million people. So they need to fine tune that, and they need to talk about who they're actually talking about. So that's who I think that they're talking about. Now, we also have high ranking contractors with big contracts. I think that they're going to look at that too, because in some of these positions, they can have certain policy, and it's really unofficial policy on how, for example, applications are done. If they want to send contractors abroad to support the warfighter, stuff like that. So I think that that's who Doug is talking about as well. Now, here is the only exception I think that someone needs to tell Doug about, that they can maybe change their position on. The union for non-supervisory positions. What do I mean? I mean that up until the time that you are a supervisor in the federal government currently, you are part of the union, whether you're making paying union dues or not. And why am I saying that? The non-supervisory positions are people who come to work every day and they get assigned duties, and their jobs are technical, and they are the actual workforce that keeps everything operational, like the computer networks. They keep the buildings fixed, people like that. And again, they are not the policymakers that these guys are talking about. And I think that there is confusion at their level to the audience that they really want to look at getting rid of downsizing. So, with that being said, here's what I think is going to happen. They're going to be laser focused on the people that I just talked about, these senior officials. Why? Because they are making policy or not acting, like I said earlier, that someone like the president is not, they're not following what the executive is saying. And I said that earlier. But my point is that it needs to be laser focused on these people. First of all, if their positions are gotten rid of, then there will be a cost savings. So that supports freeing up the money, the $2 trillion that they are talking about getting rid of them. Also, there is no such thing, in my view, as somebody having civil service protections. That is a myth. The reason that the senior guys can hang around and do whatever they want policy-wise is because their bosses do not hold them accountable. And that's not government waste. That is based on lazy leadership at the top who doesn't have people follow standards. Now, if the government civilians would follow standards, meaning the senior ones, hey, this is the policy coming from the president, it must be followed, then if they don't follow it, you can weed them out. And like I said, That is the biggest problem. Even when you go to the lower ranks, etc., that these supervisors are not following the rules for holding people accountable. Okay, here is what I think the answer to all of this part is. Let's not take out the lower level government civilian positions. Why? Because that's going to be hard to pass through Congress, meaning the House of Representatives, to get rid of that. Remember that some of the people in the House of Representatives are in districts where there are Air Force bases, there's government facilities at. So since the Republicans are only up maybe 4 or 5 people to be the majority, that's not going to play well. So if they're thinking about government civilians being cut or like a hiring freeze, say in Illinois at Scott Air Force Base, well, we've got 2 House of Representative people in this area, and the Republican is not going to cut his throat by agreeing that they need to get rid of the positions or downsize. So that's why the focus needs to be on these senior people in Washington that are GSs, 15s, and SESs to get rid of them. Well, here's what they can do, and you can pass this on to the Doge team. How about mandatory retirements for government civilians? Because if you did that, the old leadership that has been around 30 years as government civilians, you would have fresh faces in there, and they would be more up on the times. They'd be more up on, hey, the country has changed, so we need to react this way. So currently, if you didn't know, the active duty military for senior leaders has mandatory retirements. So why can't we have it for U.S. government civilians? And if we do that, then the policy makers will start doing their job if their bosses hold them accountable, if they're supposed to enforce a policy. And then the other thing is, hey, there's a cost savings if you have somebody have a mandatory retirement, because the next person taking that position won't be at the highest level. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Please subscribe to my channel and have a great day.